in the middle of a fucking pandemic. The Delta variant is running wild, and their idea was to close the one place that people had to go who were positive for COVID. And they had no place else to send them. So they were getting ready to start a whole new flare-up in this city and then act like it was our fault. We will not be silent. No matter how much violence is perpetrated on us, we will be here again and again and again until these demands are met. If nobody else will stand up for the people who have the least, we will be the ones to do it. Yes. And I thank each and every one of you who came out here today and showed the bravery to be here after what happened 2 weeks ago. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. You know, I got kids. Now I got grandkids, believe it or not. And my motivating desire for doing this has always been to make sure that I leave something better for them than what I had. But somewhere along the lines, that message got lost to those higher up. They ain't worried about leaving nothing. They'll watch this planet burn and us right along with it. Yep. Because while we're doing all of this, we are dealing with record-breaking heat, record-breaking winters. I was looking at the news today, there are 4 hurricanes happening simultaneously around this globe. That doesn't happen. And yet we have people who are stuck out here in the elements dealing with all of this because either the homeless system has failed them or it's not safe for them to be there. Because if you're trans, if you're gender non-binary, if you're LGBTQ, the homeless system is the last place that you want to be. Because you're either misgendered, you're mistreated, or you're just missed. So I'm gonna hand the mic to Max because he has some very interesting data for us about what the city actually has done compared to what they claim they've done.
So if ACT UP says the Mayor Kenney has failed, ACT UP brings receipts. We're not making stuff up. So when we say Mayor Kenney has failed, first of all, we're just going to measure him against his own goals that he set for himself. So one of the things governments like to do is they like to appoint task forces, and they like to have those task forces come up with reports. So the Mayor Kenney had a task force about housing, and he said, we're going to make a 10-year plan, and it's called the Housing for Equity plan. The idea is that you can't just let the market determine who has housing and who doesn't. You can't just let the market determine where houses get built and how much they cost, because the market's always going to build houses that are expensive, and people are always going to need houses they can afford. So Mayor Kenney's like, I got this. My task force is going to solve the problem. So they gathered a bunch of data, and they said, you know, here's how many people are already struggling with housing in Philadelphia. Here's how many people are unhoused. Here's how many people are paying more than half of their income in rent. Here's how many people's houses aren't maintained. They don't have a kitchen. They don't have a bathroom. Here's how many people just cannot live the way they're living in Philadelphia. And here's how many people are moving into the area and what we expect they're going to need. And we're going to build housing for all those people. So they made this plan and they set out their targets. They have targets for building housing for people who are unhoused. They have targets for people who are making what's called less than 30% of the area median income. In Philly, that's less than $25,000 a year for a family of 3. Now, the area median income in Philadelphia is based on the whole area. So when they go to average how much money we make, they average in the people in Bucks County, and they average in the people in Chester County, and some of the richest people in the world get averaged into the Philly average income. So when we say the area median income for Philly, it's not really taking into account what actual Philadelphians can afford. So funny to think about this, but most Philadelphians make less than $25,000 a year. Most Philadelphians make an amount of money that you cannot afford to rent an apartment in Philadelphia. So Mayor Kenney knows this, it says it in his report. So he set out targets for how much housing he's going to build for those folks. So remember, if you're already paying, half your income in rent, rent control is not going to help you. It's just going to keep your rent from going up. The only thing that's going to help you is having more cheaper housing. So we have to build a lot of housing that costs less than the housing we already have. Mayor Kenney set out goals to do that. He failed on those goals. He made a beautiful chart on the website that makes it look like he's really successful on his goals. It said we made more housing for people making 30% of AMI than we need. We're making more than our plan. What he didn't tell you was he smooshed two categories together. He smooshed together new rental properties, which is what we need because most Philadelphians are already paying more than they can afford at rent. We need new, cheaper rental properties. He smooshed that together with helping people stay in their houses. There are a lot of Philadelphians who own their house, but they can't pay property taxes. The reason they can't pay property taxes is because we give rich developers a free pass on property taxes for 10 years, and we just make the neighbors, whose neighbors are being changed by gentrification, pay more in property taxes, property values go up, while we let the developers get away with paying nothing in property taxes. And people can't afford to repair their house. Philadelphia is redlined, right? People can't get loans. They still are being redlined. Wells Fargo, there was a lawsuit brought against them, not in the 1960s, but in the 2016s about redlining in Philadelphia. So people can't afford to fix up their houses. And so Mayor Kenney counted every single time he helped somebody out with their utility bills, and every single time he helped someone fix their heater as preserving their housing. And that's 2,000 of the 3,000 homes that he preserved was he helped somebody out with their utilities. Didn't necessarily help them fix their roof, didn't necessarily help them get running water in their bathroom or kitchen, because there are people living in Philadelphia with no kitchen and no bathroom in Philadelphia. Right? Mayor Kenney didn't help with that. He just helped people pay their heat and water bill for a minute. And then he counted that as a victory, when in fact he failed to meet his goals to build new housing and preserve affordable rental housing for the lowest income Philadelphians who need it the most. He also failed on his goals for homelessness. He was supposed to build 250 new houses a year for homeless people. Every year that since his plan has come out, he's built about half of that, right? Mayor Kenney is failing on his own goals. Now, if Mayor Kenney were trying really hard, if he were raising the budgets for the Housing Trust Fund and he were raising the budget for the Office of Homeless Services, if he was taking every single dollar that FEMA and HUD and the federal government were handing out, and he still couldn't meet his goals, maybe we wouldn't be out here. Maybe we'd be in Harrisburg, maybe we'd be in DC. But Mayor Kenney, every single year since he's been in office, has said, I know what would be a good idea. Let's cut the Office of Homeless Services, or let's cut the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, or let's flat fund them so they can't even keep up with inflation, right? Every single year, that's been his plan, and every single year we've been protesting. Every single year we've managed to convince City Council to bump it up a little bit so we're not losing affordable housing quite as quickly. But Mayor Kenney has not even tried to meet his goals. He's got this report full of lots of really good ideas like a construction impact tax, and then he himself vetoes the construction impact tax that council puts before him from his own plan. Right? Mayor Kenney is not trying to house our most vulnerable neighbors. What he's investing in is tax cuts for businesses. That was this year's big exciting spending. And he's investing last year, his big exciting spending package was increases for the police. Do you know why he needs increases for the police? Because he uses them to pretend he's solving problems in Kensington that he's not actually solving. He sends more and more police patrols to Kensington to take people's belongings, to throw them in the trash, to move people along. Every single time somebody who's using opioids gets locked up, that puts them at greater risk of overdosing and dying. Every single time somebody gets moved along from an encampment, that puts them at greater risk of using alone and overdosing and dying. Mayor Kenney doesn't care about that. Mayor Kenney cares about making sure that developers have everything they need to develop fancy housing in the city, because Mayor Kenney did meet one of his goals. He got flying colors. He got an A+ on one line of his spreadsheet. He built twice as much market rate housing as his plan called for, right? And that is a sunk cost. Every piece of market rate housing that gets built is a piece of affordable housing that does not get built. It is a neighborhood that gets gentrified. It is people whose property taxes go up and lose their house. It is people whose rents go up and they lose their housing. It is people who enter the Office of Homeless Services system, which got cut, which doesn't help people who are using drugs, because you can get evicted from a shelter for having a single marijuana cigarette in a city that is a housing first city that's supposed to have no barrier to entry to its shelters, right? You can get evicted from a shelter for overdosing. What do you think is going to happen to you next time you want to use? You're going to go somewhere alone. It's how my friend Paul Yaber died. He was living in a shelter. He would lose his housing if they knew he was using. He went down to the tracks to use, even though he's the guy who was out there every single day telling people, don't use alone. Even though he was the guy who was out there every single day giving out Narcan and teaching people how to use it. He died because he had to hide his use because of his housing situation, right? Mayor Kenney is killing people when he fails on these goals, when he doesn't invest in housing, when he invests in police instead, when he invests in tax cuts instead. So we're not going to let him get away with it. We're not going to let him get away with lying to us. We're not going to let him get away with saying he's done more for affordable housing than any administration. We're going to hold him accountable every time we're out here. We're going to hold him accountable in the press. We're going to hold him accountable by doing his job for him. When we go out and are the ones doing outreach in Kensington, when we go out who are the ones keeping people safe from police, we're going to do Mayor Kenney's job for him until he starts doing it.
Thank you. And remember, he's building all this extra market rate housing, while at this point we have enough houses empty in this city to house every single person that is on the street right now. Every single one. And they would still have empty houses left over, so if they wanted to give those away to the developers, they could. Right? It's not like there's not enough space in this city to put everybody up and still allow the developers to develop whatever the hell they want to develop. But Mayor Kenney's given us a very clear vision of what his vision of this city is, and it's not for people like us. When he could take money and put it towards mental health services, he doesn't. When he could have issued an executive order that would have allowed the city to open its first safe consumption site, which would have done away with seeing people using on the street, with seeing needles and paraphernalia that residents in Kensington complain about on the streets. He chose not to. Instead, what the city did was they doubled down. So now they've started to try to put protesters against residents and residents against homeless people. It's a divide and conquer that is no longer working. Because the last protest we had up in Kensington, for at least 30 minutes, the protesters and the residents came together and we realized one thing, and that's that the city's our enemy, not each other. That's that this government that has, for the last 245 years, oppressed the lowest of the low, that's our enemy, not each other. They've gotten away with it for this long because they've managed to keep us divided. But as you can see from the people who continue to trickle in, that is not working anymore. We get it. We understand. During the middle of a pandemic, do we remember when we were seeing stuff in the news about how people were sleeping in, I don't fly that much, so I don't know like the exact things, but I think it was Terminal A, you had a bunch of people sleeping in there. Does everybody know that the city actually paid the Marriott at the airport $200K to house people during the pandemic, and they let those people sleep in that terminal for months? And then when they decided they were going to clear it, did they move them to the Marriott? No. Did they even give them COVID testing? No. They just cleared it, moved people to shelters, or tried to move them to shelters, and that was that. So the Marriott got 200K and we got nothing. That 200K could have kept the Holiday Inn open when they closed it last October, right before winter hit. And people were still worried. There was no vaccine. There was no attempts at mitigating the spread except being able to isolate. And yet this city still has not gotten a grip. We're almost through the summer. The cold weather's coming. We know what that means for COVID. So we gotta stay on their ass and make sure that they reopen those hotels so that the people who are most vulnerable to this disease will be protected. Can you hear me better? Now I lost my train of thought.
Sorry. Well, since I interrupted Jamal, I guess I'll go. Hi, my name is Adrienne. I'm a longtime member of ACT UP Philadelphia. This is my favorite of the t-shirts. If you know me, you know why. 2 weeks ago, we were just around the corner and we had a whole barbecue set up. We were ready to hang out with folks, talk to folks, and share stories. And part of that barbecue, we were gonna roast Mayor Kenney. Not like a funny roast, but just a calling him out roast. We had a whole list of things that we wanted to talk about. The way he lies, the way the city lies about what's going on, the way he's failed us, the way he's failed to give money for people, failed to invest in people. And so one of the things that I want to talk about is the way that this city does what they call encampment resolutions. And they love to call them resolutions. They're evictions. When you have a large encampment, they're doing it oftentimes up in Kensington. They've done it all around the city. I give up on that. They have these plans and they put them forward year after year after year after year. I remember one in 2017, I remember one in 2018, I remember one in 2019, I remember these every single year. Every single year they say, if we get these people off this specific spot and off of this specific street, and if we throw all their stuff away, somehow they will magically get housing. The city calls these and starts to talk about them as service-led. Service-led, they're offering people services, but what's actually happening when you talk to people on the streets, people aren't being offered services half the time. A lot of the services that they're being offered don't meet their needs. So the services aren't housing first. They are not safe for queer people, trans people. They're not safe for couples. Couples can't stay together. A lot of people choose to stay on the streets because our programs are not safe for them. Also, a lot of those programs, nobody's following up with them to make sure that they're okay. And some people don't want what we have to offer here in the city, and that's fine. And so what I want to just let people know is that when they tell you it's service-led, it's a fucking lie. It is police-led. The mornings when they do evictions, you start out with trash trucks, and you start out with police officers threatening people with arrest if they continue to stay in their home, the closest thing they have to a home, and if they continue to stay with their community that they have built. Those communities, as my friends before me said, are saving lives. When I would go into the Emerald Street encampment, people were using drugs, but everybody had Narcan. Every single fucking person had Narcan. Everybody, they had Narcan up on the walls, they had Narcan in their bags, they had Narcan hanging off their tents, and people weren't dying like they were dying elsewhere, because there was always someone there to take care of you. They evicted the Emerald Street encampments, they evicted the Kensington Street encampments, they evicted all of those other encampments, and 2 of my friends died. They died because they were fucking alone, and they didn't have to be. That's why I say fire Liz Hirsch. That's why I'm here yelling at Mayor Kenney. That's what I really want people to know, because the Office of Homeless Services is very good at messaging. They will say all sorts of nice, soft, happy things about their encampment resolutions, which sounds really nice, right? We're resolving a problem. People, human beings, are not a problem. They're not a problem. They deserve housing, they deserve health care, and they deserve to be in the community that they want to be in. The Office of Homeless Services has no consideration for the safety of community and why people come into community. Community is really important to me. That's why I'm here. That's why I have all of you. Y'all are my community. And I had a bunch of other stuff I was going to yell about, but that's not important. The last thing that I want you to just remember is that every time the city does one of these resolutions, quote unquote resolutions, these violent police-driven evictions, people ask me, where am I supposed to go? Where am I supposed to go? I lived over there, they kicked me out. I lived over there, they kicked me out. I lived over there, they kicked me out. Where am I supposed to go? So I'd like to ask Liz Hirsch where the fuck she thinks people are supposed to go.
And we need to push back on something that Liz Hirsch says quite often. And that's that people are shelter resistant. What the fuck does that even mean? Right? Who wants to go? Let me ask you a question. If you were on the street and you had some place that was safe enough, people who were looking out for you, your belongings wasn't getting stolen, and you found a way to meet your basic needs, would you then turn around and have to probably get rid of 3/4 of your stuff because there's nowhere to keep it? Have to stand in a line to get whatever medication you take every day? Have to stand in a line to get food that's barely edible? And sleep in a room with 40 to 50 other people who are doing whatever they do. I was in a shelter in Philadelphia, a couple of them, and I pray to God I never have to go back. That was the worst point in my life. Not because it was a shelter, not because I was homeless, because I've been bouncing in and out of that for like 6 years. No, the treatment that I got, you are dehumanized on every level. You are made to feel like the fact that you're homeless, the fact that you're in this situation, regardless of why you are there, it is your fault. I don't have an opioid problem. I have some mental health issues, but that wasn't the reason that I was on the street, right? Like, I was just a victim of bad circumstances. That's it. No matter what I would have done, I would have wound up there, because that's just how the system's set up. But I had to listen, and I was forced into groups that wanted to teach me how to budget money. I can't budget what I don't have. I was forced into groups that wanted to teach me basic life skills. I'm a father of 6. I think I know basic life skills. You know, but this is what you go through when you're offered shelter services. And it's worse if you have an opioid issue, because then they force you into treatment first. They tell you that this is housing first, but they force you into treatment before they'll put you in a shelter. And treatment usually consists of going somewhere and sitting somewhere for 2 to 3 hours when you are physically sick because you don't have what you need to stay well. And for people who aren't opioid addicted or who have never been, understand that that is not a mental issue. You are physically sick if you don't have it. So you can't just say, oh, I'm gonna stop, and that's it. You know, you need some kind of assistance, some kind of time, some way to work yourself through that process. It's not I'm using a day and I'm done tomorrow. People who are alcoholics and went through AA, they had a process, right? NA, process. Any treatment, mental health, it doesn't matter what it is. Even when you gotta go to the doctor, if you have a serious illness, it's a process. Nothing happens overnight. We have been, for the last 5 to 6 years, trying to get them to institute the proper process that people need. But since not one person who sits in the mayor's administration has any idea how to deal with issues that are beyond their control, they haven't learned the process. And when we try to educate them, they ignore us because, oh, they're the mayor, they know better. No, you just got lucky enough to trick a bunch of people into putting you in that position. Because, let's be real, he got elected mayor on a bunch of lies. He promised to end stop and frisk. You go to West Philly, you get frisked more now than before Kenny became mayor. He brought outlaw here. Danielle Outlaw. Kenny brought her here. She couldn't pull the shit in Portland that she was pulling. That's why she wound up here, and then she came here and started doing the same damn thing. Tear gassing people on 676. Tear gassing half of West Philly. And I was there when that started. The narrative says that West Philly started rioting. That's bullshit. The cops started that shit. I was there. So, I'm at the point where if Kenny's not gonna do his job, he needs to resign too. See, I've done research because I was gonna push for a recall and I found out that Pennsylvania made that impossible. So we can't recall the mayor of our city. But what we can do is put enough pressure on him to make his ass leave. He is failing us on gun violence. He is failing us on the opioid epidemic. He is failing us on housing issues. He is failing over and over and over again. And as we keep telling you, Kenny, you got 3 more years in office, so we got plenty of time to be a pain in your ass. We will continue to hold Mayor Kenny and his administration accountable for every failure that they have. We will continue to be a pain in his ass as long as he's a pain in the ass of the citizens of Philadelphia. And if you want to help us continue to hold him and City Council accountable for what's going on, there is going to be a protest tomorrow at McPherson Park in Kensington. Because, and get this, y'all, this City Council, after doing 3 years of reports and committees and studies and all that nonsense, has finally decided that they want to hold the quality of life hearing in Kensington. Well, the quality of life is, it sucks. It sucks for the homeless people, it sucks for the residents, it sucks for the business owners. The only people that's doing any good, getting anything out of Kensington right now is developers. There's a reason why Maria Quinones Sanchez all of a sudden went from supporting a safe consumption site to giving a bullshit ass podcast where she's talking about grown ass people need to be held at the police department until their parents come and pick them up. Because in her words, the Latinx community is a tight-knit community and all communities should be like that. Well, that's not how it is. And if you know that population, you know you have LGBT people up there whose families have turned their backs on them. You have people who have been stuck in opioid addiction for decades, whose families just don't know what to do with them. You have kids up there who are orphaned or homeless, or their parents disappeared and they don't know where to go or what to do. But in no way, shape, or form is criminalizing any of these people gonna solve that problem. They have been trying to arrest their way out of these problems for the last 20 to 30 years, and all it has done is made things worse.
Right.
And I think it's funny how, I think it was last summer when we were calling for money to be divested from the police department and put it into programs like mental health services and having caseworkers and mental health workers responding to the emergencies that they should be responding to, that they found a way to increase the budget, and then Philly Police Department decided that they deserved raises because they had to wear body cams and be accountable. How accountable were they for 2 weeks ago? We still haven't seen the body cam footage. And you can't trust the narrative that's in most of the papers because it's a bunch of bullshit. I wish I could go deeper into that, but I can't yet because of the legal stuff that's still going on. But trust and believe, once that's cleared, we'll have a hell of a lot to say. But at the end of the day, we're out here for homeless people. So I'd like to remind the mayor, because I know somewhere, somehow, this message is getting to him, just exactly what we want. And the first demand is that you end all evictions immediately. That includes permanent encampments, shelters, for any reason, including opioid use. We demand the formation of a paid oversight board that is made up of people who are unhoused and people in the shelter system. And they must be paid, and they must be trained to understand the budgeting process so that they can be an effective board for the Office of Homeless Services. Because if you claim to serve homeless people, you need to be accountable to them. We demand an immediate audit of all city contracted homeless shelter service providers to make sure that they are providing true housing first, trauma-informed care. We demand that you reopen the COVID hotels and apply for the federal FEMA money that is available in order to provide true non-congregate housing first, trauma-informed shelter services. We also demand that you immediately take all PHA-owned empty properties and empty properties throughout this city and make them accessible to people with an area median income of 30% or less. And in layman's terms, that means anybody making less than $25,000 a year should have somewhere to live. And finally, but definitely not least, fire Liz Hurst and all of the upper management of the Office of Homeless Services, and hire people who were appointed by the board that we stated in the second demand. As long as these demands are not met, we will continue to come out here. We will continue to push and push and push. And there is no amount of intimidation that any service or any office in this city can push that will make us stop. Violence will not get our silence. I heard a request for a chant, so the chant is, he's throwing with y'all. Violence will not get our silence. All right, so I'll yell violence. You guys follow behind me. Violence will not get our silence. Violence will not get our silence. Violence will not get our silence. We said 2 weeks ago we would be back. We said 2 weeks ago that no matter what happened that day, we were not afraid and we would be back, and we are here. And we will continue to be here. We will continue to assert our presence, and we will continue to build community amongst the people who believe that housing is a human right. This is not a negotiable demand. Housing is a human right.
Housing is a human right.
I actually got a better one. Yeah. So, when I say I believe, no, when I say that, I want y'all to scream, we will win. All right? Y'all got it? Let's try it. I believe. We will win. I believe. That 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 we will win. Yeah. Yeah. And just because it's not an act up action, if we don't say these words right here, And the way this goes is, I'll ask a question like, when homeless people are under attack, what do? There you go. There you go, we got it. All right, so when homeless people are under attack, what do? Act up, fight back. Act up, fight back.
Right, AIDS.
Yeah. So when homeless people are under attack, what do? Act up, fight back. What do? Act up, fight back. What do? Act up, fight back. Once again, tomorrow, 4 o'clock, McPherson Square, there will be a protest. It's not an ACT UP led protest, by the way, but there's another group holding a protest up there about the quality of life hearings. I hope to see everybody out there. Oh, also, on Thursday, August the 12th, 2 p.m., at the ICE office at 114 North 8th Street is a Free Them All rally. And we're demanding that people who are being detained by ICE right now be released, not transferred. So please, if you can, show up to those events. I know I'll definitely be at tomorrow. I'm not sure about Thursday, but I hope to see as many people there as possible.
Hey, what's up everyone? Thanks for watching. This has been a protest. Sorry. We've been live streaming this protest here outside. I think this building, or a building immediately connected to it, is the residence of Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney. The group ACT UP and some other people have been out here calling on the Philly mayor to stop evicting homeless encampments and freeze all evictions in the city of Philadelphia. It's not clear if Biden's extension of the eviction moratorium really applies to Philadelphia, since the COVID rates here are a bit lower than in other places. There was another protest here outside the mayor's residence 2 weeks ago where Philadelphia police got pretty hands-on and injured some people. Things have been a little calmer today. But yeah, so people have been saying that the mayor is not meeting his promises in terms of providing affordable housing, and also they're continuing to evict homeless encampments during the pandemic and not offering, COVID-safe housing that was promised earlier. So this has been Chris with Unicorn Riot live in Philadelphia. Thanks for watching. We're going to go ahead and take the stream down since the event here is wrapping up. Thanks everyone for watching.
Can you move out in the street, please? Stop blocking the highway. Thank you.
You got plenty of space, man. Plenty of it. Almost hit somebody though. Almost hitting people, man. Plenty of space. We got it. Wow. No, it's funny. That guy was just being an asshole. He couldn't do like, we blocked the street. They had to tell him what to do.
I already did that.
So there's been a pretty decent police presence around the periphery of this event. That's the so-called audio-visual unit from the Philly police. They're just surveillance. They're just like, even when protests don't seem to have any sort of alleged law-breaking going on, they're usually out here filming people's faces. They'll film me when I'm documenting these events. They're just pretty like overt about being like, hey, we're surveilling you. That's pretty normal here in Philadelphia, political surveillance by the police. There's some other officers from civil affairs stationed over here. And more officers there down the block as well. So thanks for watching. Looks like things are winding down here. We weren't sure if the police were going to confront people for a second there, so we kept the stream up, but we're going to go ahead and take it down. Thanks for watching.
Yeah.